Hey guys! So, with the recent rumors of various characters making appearances and cameos in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, it's been heavily applied that Wolverine's supposed to be making an appearance as well. So, we already have confirmation that Patrick Stewart is going to reprise his role as Professor X, despite the fact that the latter himself has denied the rumors in various interviews and Jimmy Fallon. He's pulling the same routine just like Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire did when they denounced their roles that they weren't going to show up to play their respective Peter Parkers in Spider-Man No Way Home. And we all know how that turned out. But despite the fact that that's pretty much going around, the fact that Wolverine making an appearance is going to be really cool. So it'll be a good way to not only introduce Wolverine himself, but other mutants who play a pivotal role in the X-Men universe as well. So it'll be really cool to introduce the team as well. So how they can actually do it, since we already understood that Wanda Maximoff and her brother Pietro Maximoff are mutants, it would be a good way to pretty much, at least by the end of the movie itself, at least have Wanda do a spell pretty much similar to how Thanos used the Infinity Gauntlet and eradicate all life with a split, just like that with the snap, with all the Infinity Stones attached. At least have Wanda do a spell which is similar to what she did in the comics in the House of M, where in that particular scenario in the comics when she says no more mutants and all the mutants were gone, but in the MCU, at least have her say bring in mutants, bring in people that are just like me who have the same abilities as me. So, and then you can also have other facilities that have been around for a long time too that have been next to Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. For example, the Weapon X program, which is pretty much known where Logan got his adamantium bones from. And then also his partner Maverick, and even the X-Men's arch enemy Omega Red as well. So at least it would be a good scenario to pretty much bring in those buildings at the same time that have been around the same time as Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. So it would be a great way. I mean, we know that Baron Von Strucker and Arnim Zola, they've been around as far as like doing experiments on people and stuff like that. So they're pretty much known for doing experimentation. So, but yeah, I mean, it'd be a great way to pretty much just introduce mutants as far as like not getting too convoluted into bringing in the origin story of how mutants were born, because we know people who are born with extra power, their mutant abilities do not manifest until adolescence. So it would be a great way to pretty much introduce mutants as a whole. So that's my take on it, and I was going to actually sum up everything by the end of this video. But I've got Rob Jefferson from Geek Culture Explained and Comics Explained. His video just dropped hours ago, and he was pretty much talking about the same thing that I'm talking about right now as far as like what they can do to bring in Wolverine to the MCU. And again, this is all just theories. And this is theories that I even talked about in my last video talking about Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness and how they can pretty much bring in all the characters with different cameos and scenarios, because regardless of the fact of the theories I'm talking about, or we're all talking about, everybody is going to be mind blown on May 6th. So Multiverse of Madness comes out, it's going to be a kicker, that's for sure. So, but I got Rob next to me, so without further ado, let's get into this.
What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and like 2 years ago, right, a year and a half, 2 years ago, I did a live stream on the Comics Explained Twitch channel, which I'll link to the video in particular that I'm referencing, but I basically laid out how it is we could introduce Wolverine into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and to a larger degree, how we could introduce mutants. Now, a lot of the more recent revelations from like WandaVision, the fact that Wanda's basically had powers ever since she was a little girl, the prevailing theory that's been very, very popular right now, which is that Wanda is actually a mutant, is something that nobody seems to know it, not even she really knows it. A lot of that seems to, at least to a degree, flew in the face of what I had come up with, but a lot of what I theorized would still actually work. In terms of the origins of mutants, maybe, maybe not, right? In terms of like how to bring Wolverine into the MCU, absolutely, but it could very much tie into the origin of mutants as well, and we'll talk about that once we get towards the end of this video, specifically when it came to Baron Von Strucker, Wanda, Pietro, that kind of stuff. So, here's what I want to do. the first thing I want to establish, and I'm not going to run over each individual item, but I want to establish that I'm going to be pulling elements from different aspects of Marvel Comics, from the Ultimate Universe, from the main Marvel Universe, different things like that, and sort of condense it all down, but I'll make it super easy. So here's the idea behind this. Let's go back to Captain America, the first Avenger, and let's also invoke Captain America, the Winter Soldier. What do we know about Captain America, the first Avenger, right? Steve Rogers was a kid that really wanted to fight against the Axis forces during World War II, but he was too small, too skinny. He ended up becoming the first successful candidate for the Super Soldier Serum that was created by Abraham Erskine. He didn't lose his mind and become a villain, and then he became Captain America. He fought in World War II for a little while, he almost banged Peggy Carter, and then he was basically frozen in a block of ice for 70 years. Roll credits. Now, let's move on to Captain America, the Winter Soldier. Now, what do we know referencing Captain America and the Winter Soldier? We know that after the perceived death of Steve Rogers, the mission had to go on. And that what happened is that Peggy Carter and Howard Stark and Chester Phillips formed the Strategic Science Reserve, or Strategic Scientific Reserve. I can't remember which one is which. But regardless, they formed the organization that would eventually go on to become S.H.I.E.L.D. The other thing we know is that from Arnim Zola, Hydra started regrowing in the SSR and eventually S.H.I.E.L.D.
Arnim Zola's a piece of work, that's for sure.
Hydra had been completely in control of S.H.I.E.L.D. Remember, one of the things that Arnim Zola said is that for decades, they've been sowing conflict, reaping war. So it's not as though Hydra hadn't fully assumed control of S.H.I.E.L.D. until we got to the events of Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and like Robert Redford's character and all that kind of stuff. No. They've been doing it for a long time. It's just no one had known about it. So let's say that since the 1960s, Hydra had basically been manipulating things. Had been like in full control of S.H.I.E.L.D. Now, this is important because let's say that with Hydra being in control of S.H.I.E.L.D., one of the things that Hydra wanted to do was create more Captain Americas. But with Abraham Erskine being dead and Steve Rogers being frozen in a block of ice but being assumed dead, there was no conceivable means to duplicate that. But what they ended up doing by whatever manner and whatever means is they said, we're going to try to create more Captain Americas. We're going to try to create things that are better than Captain America, and they will be agents of Hydra. So they can infiltrate society, or they can help us basically conquer the world. Whatever the case happens to be. And so what they did is they formed something called Weapons Plus. And Weapons Plus was basically the umbrella project. Under that, you had Weapon 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, running all the way up to Weapon 10, which we'll talk about here in a minute. Now, let's say that with Hydra operating and basically controlling S.H.I.E.L.D. in the 1960s, 1970s, and 80s and 90s, that in the 60s per se, this was the age of the Cold War, right? This was the age of like the spy. Technically, the Cold War had been going on since like the end of World War II. So we'll say from like the early 1950s, basically going until about the 80s.
The Cold War's been around for a long time.
The Cold War was the age of spies. And so let's say that with Hydra controlling S.H.I.E.L.D., while they did have all kinds of agents, what they also had were just Black Ops wet work teams. These were teams that, as far as their mission was concerned, was to go and infiltrate some dictator somewhere who had gotten his hands on some kind of a nuclear device, or some crazy fanatic somewhere who got his hands on like a dirty bomb. Whatever it was, that was the mission that they were officially told, right? That was their story. What was really happening here is they were being sent into various places to take out people who were credible threats to Hydra. All this time, Hydra has Weapons Plus, and Hydra's got Weapon 1, and they got Weapon 2, and Weapon 3, and they're doing stuff like bonding cybernetic implants to animals, right? Or bonding them to people, or experimenting with drugs, and in terms of like, was it Frank Simpson, Nuke, right? He takes the red, white, and blue pills to like amp him up.
That was in Jessica Jones too, when he was in there.
Along those lines, right? Like Nuke, you guys may remember, or Frank Simpson, you may remember from like the Jessica Jones TV show, the blonde guy who kept popping all those pills, and if he didn't, he'd lose his mind. Like that guy, right? He's actually a Weapons Plus project in Marvel Comics. Now, the important thing here is that among all these different teams, there's one guy who stands out in particular, who's ridiculously capable, right? As far as we're aware, he has no powers. And in fact, we can say he has no powers. That at this point in time, Wolverine in his life has no healing factor, he's got no claws, he's just that damn good at being a spy, right? It's like he's got a natural aptitude for espionage, for stealth and guile, for just killing people, right? It's almost like an ingrained part of him. And Hydra notices this. And Hydra's like, okay, we need this guy. We're going to bring this guy in. Like, this guy's going to be the next test subject for our Weapons Plus project, whatever it happens to be, right? Whatever form it takes. It just happens to be this guy is the 10th test subject, also known as Weapon X. And so what this does is it basically brings Wolverine into that actual name. Now, here's the kicker to this. That as Hydra is experimenting on him and studying his genes and all that kind of stuff, they realize there's a gene in his body that is dormant, and they have no idea what it represents. It doesn't match any known database on the planet. There's nothing in the discovery of the human genome that says anything about this particular gene. It's almost like it's not even of this earth. Now, kind of a sidetrack here, we can say that it was put there by the Celestials or whatever it is, but in effect, this is his mutant gene. Hydra, not knowing what it is, activates it. And that's when Wolverine gets bone claws, and that's when Wolverine gets his healing factor. And so it's like, okay, so cool. We kind of have like the framework of Wolverine. The big question we have to ask here is, how do we go from Wolverine being a guy with bone claws and a healing factor to Wolverine having adamantium bonded to the skeleton? Enter Myron McClane. Okay, who's Myron McClane? In Marvel Comics, Myron McClane was a metallurgist. So let's walk away from this theory for a second, and let's focus on the comics for a second. So in Marvel Comics, during World War II, Captain America and the Invaders, so the original Human Torch, Jim Hammond, Namor the Submariner, Bucky Barnes, they fought alongside the Wakandans, helping to fend off German forces. And that as a result of this, there were two things that came out of it. The first is that Captain America realized the Wakandans used circular shields, unlike his shield, which at the time was in the shape of an island. The benefit of using a circular shield is that, yes, it can be used for defense, to block attacks, things like that, but they can also throw it. It can be an offensive weapon. The other thing that came out of this is that as thanks for his efforts in helping them defeat the Germans, Captain America was given a small shard of vibranium by the Wakandans. And so when he came back to the United States, he told the federal government, make me a new shield, make it round, and put this vibranium in it. And so the government contracted out to Myron McClane, who was a metallurgist. Myron McClane took that vibranium, basically started building a new shield, and much like the discovery of penicillin, fell asleep during the process. When he woke up, Captain America's shield was created, but it was not just a vibranium shield. It was a vibranium iron alloy shield. The issue with this is that Myron McClane didn't readily know that. So what he did is he tried to duplicate Captain America's shield and accidentally created adamantium in the process. Now, back into our theory. How do we introduce adamantium into the Marvel Cinematic Universe? We use Wakanda. And here's the reason why. If you guys remember from Iron Man 2, that scene at the end of the movie when Tony Stark is talking to Nick Fury, and there's the map behind him, and basically it shows all the different points where there are people with essentially powers, right? Beings of interest, right? Places of interest to S.H.I.E.L.D. itself. That you had the Atlantic Ocean, which of course was a direct reference to Atlantis, i.e. Namor the Submariner. There was also one in Africa. Basically, S.H.I.E.L.D. knew about Wakanda. Now, we can't invoke Ulysses Claw, because Ulysses Claw did not successfully invade Wakanda and steal vibranium until 1992. We're still talking about the 1960s, maybe the 1970s, so 20 years before that ever happened. Here's the kicker. We don't know how long S.H.I.E.L.D. had known about Wakanda. We don't know if S.H.I.E.L.D. only discovered Wakanda because technology in the 2000s going forward had become sufficiently advanced enough to where they could even detect it, or if they had known about Wakanda for a long time, but were just never able to get in.
Yeah, and that scene, especially from that scene with Iron Man 3 where you see all the maps, is practically similar to Avengers Endgame, where Atlantis was heavily featured in the background. So Namor is definitely in the MCU. He'll definitely show up eventually too. But considering the fact that Namor is also part of the Illuminati Council in the comics, chances are, like I said, another rumor as far as like him showing up with the various characters as well. It's gonna be fascinating to say the least. So, but yeah, if we get Wolverine and Namor at the same time, I mean, that's gonna be radical.
Maybe they were. Who knows? Who cares? The important thing here is whether they knew about Wakanda and were trying to find a way to duplicate vibranium, or if Myron McClane was simply just a Hydra metallurgist, right, a Hydra agent who was just trying to find some way to create a super advanced metal. The end result is we land on adamantium. And so circling back, once Hydra activates this secret gene of Wolverine, and then basically realize he has a healing factor and he's got bone claws, they bond adamantium to a skeleton, they try to basically turn him into an agent, and he ends up escaping, and the rest is history. Right? He just kind of goes forward and does his own thing.
Exactly.
Now, having said all that, here's the biggest takeaway from all of this, right? Because that's just Wolverine, right? Here's the biggest takeaway from all of this. If we really want to tie this into like Wanda and Pietro and all that kind of stuff, what we do is we say that this whole thing, right? Because up until that point, Baron von Strucker and then, like, one of the things he said is that there are multiple Hydra agencies around the world who are basically conducting the exact same experiment that he's doing. Maybe not using Mind Stone, because as far as we're aware, there's only one of those. But Sokovia is seemingly not the only place where Hydra detected genetic abnormalities. What this does in terms of them, like, discovering Wolverine, activating Wolverine's gene, discovering that he has powers, is it lends a basis and an explanation to why it is that Baron von Strucker and the rest of Hydra are going to places where they discover people with genetic abnormalities and then taking them and activating those genes. That the Mind Stone is what Baron von Strucker used because perhaps it's the most effective.
That would be interesting.
It's the easiest thing. We don't really know.
The Mind Stone and the activating mutant gene.
But this explains why it is that he knew to activate the genes of Pietro, and he knew to activate, or at least believed he was activating the gene of Wanda. That in turn, of course, pushed powers and that kind of thing. But basically, it gives us the origin of Wolverine, and it gives us an explanation of other people around the world all having these genetic abnormalities, but in effect, they're all basically mutants with X genes that simply haven't been activated yet. It also neatly ties in to Wanda gaining her powers in the sense that her powers activated almost in the exact same way they do occasionally in Marvel Comics, which is through, like, moments of duress. We talked about that in our previous video. Moments of high duress led to her powers being activated, right? So, let me know what you guys think down in the comments section, right? I mean, do you think this works? Like, do you think this theory works? Because when I was streaming it a couple years ago, people loved it. They were like, dude, this is amazing. Like, dude, this theory is perfect. You should be working for Marvel, man. Like, if Marvel doesn't use this idea, it's a terrible thing. Let me know what you guys think. Of course, I can also count on you guys to just punch holes, to just Swiss cheese this theory. I can totally count on you guys to do that. And that's
Yes, that's my bro. So Rob is the man. But yeah, I pretty much, you know what's funny? People always tell me, like, bro, and if your knowledge, you should work for Marvel too, because if your ideas, if they don't listen, then it's a terrible idea. So Rob and I get those comments all the time. So, but yeah, I mean, that all of that makes sense. I mean, as far as like what they can actually do with how they can introduce adamantium into Wakanda, and how adamantium and vibranium are pretty much different elements, but they work at the same time too. And then of course bringing in the scientist Myron at the same time, I mean, that would be interesting itself, because basically he's pretty much like the anti-Abraham Erskine who created the super soldier formula for Captain America. So yeah, and then on top of that, I mean, the Tesseract with the Cosmic Cube and how that activates the mutant gene. Boy, that's mind-blowing too. I mean, that's another way to pretty much using an Infinity Stone to activate the mutant gene. So that's just fascinating. Very fascinating indeed. And I say this all the time. I sound exactly like Henry McCoy, aka Beast. So yeah, but yeah, seeing Beast in the MCU would be awesome too. So, but yeah, that's pretty much my take on it, you know, and Rob's take on it as well. I'm gonna definitely do another video talking about Omega Red and the individual Marvel characters in my next videos as well. So, but yeah, let me know what you guys think. Subscribe to this channel, share this video, like this video. Let me know what you guys think. You guys think this is a good idea? You guys think having Wolverine in the MCU coming in? What are your thoughts on that? So, I love to hear from you guys, man. So, like this video, share this video, subscribe. Let me know what you guys think. And you guys have any questions, just let me know. Comment down below. And yeah, this is going to be awesome. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing Multiverse of Madness in May 6th. So it's going to be great. So, but yeah, you guys continue to spread love, be love, and I'll definitely see you guys in the next video. Until then, take care, guys. Much love.